How I Uncovered My Husband's Affair and Planned the Ultimate Revenge. Chapter 1. The Realization. Have you ever had that gut feeling? The kind that creeps in quietly, almost too softly to notice at first, but grows louder until it's screaming in your mind. Impossible to ignore? I had that feeling, but I pushed it down, telling myself that everything was fine. For 12 years, my husband, Matt, and I built what seemed like the perfect life. 2 beautiful children, a cozy home, and a marriage that everyone admired. But deep down, something had changed. I just wasn't ready to face it. It all started with small things you could easily brush off if you weren't paying attention. He started working late more often, saying his new client meetings were running over. His phone seemed glued to his hand, even when we were sitting together on the couch. He'd smile when it buzzed, but tilt it just out of my sight. I ignored it. I wanted to believe him, because once you let suspicion take root, it's like opening a door you can never close again. But when that door cracked open for me, everything started to unravel. I remember the first real sign. We were getting ready for bed one evening. He came home late, exhausted, as usual, but something was different. It wasn't just the lateness or the tiredness that caught my attention. It was the smell. His cologne. Not the one I had given him for his birthday last year. No, this was something new. Something expensive and unfamiliar. New cologne? I asked casually, forcing myself to sound light, playful even. He hesitated. Just for a second, but long enough for me to notice. Yeah, he replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Got it from one of the guys at work. Thought I'd try something new. There it was again, that feeling. But I told myself not to overthink it. I mean, who gets suspicious over a bottle of cologne? I told myself I was being paranoid, that I needed to trust him. We had been through so much together. We had built a family. He loved me, right? But then there were the business trips. More and more frequent. Always last minute. Always with some new excuse about how a client urgently needed him to fly out. It wasn't unusual for Matt to travel for work, but suddenly, he was gone too. Sometimes 3 weekends a month. And every time he left, that sinking feeling in my chest grew heavier. One night, after he left for yet another trip, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty space where he had been. The kids were asleep, and the house felt too quiet, almost suffocating in its silence. That's when I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I knew I needed to trust my instincts, even if it hurt to admit that something was wrong. The turning point came on a Friday evening. Matt had left for one of his urgent business trips that morning. He was in such a rush that he left his phone charging in the kitchen. It was rare. He never forgot his phone. And as it sat there, buzzing softly on the countertop, I felt my stomach churn. I stared at it, feeling like the room had grown colder, like the air had thickened around me. My heart was pounding in my chest. I wasn't the kind of person who snooped, but something inside me knew. I needed to look. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. With trembling hands, I picked up the phone and entered his passcode. He had always been open with it, never giving me a reason to think otherwise. The screen unlocked, and there it was. One unread message. From a woman named Lily. My fingers hovered over the screen as a sense of dread filled my chest. My mind raced, trying to make excuses for him. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe she was a client. Maybe, but deep down, I knew the truth. I opened the message, and my world shifted. I can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. Red heart. I sat down, my legs shaking beneath me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My entire body went numb, the words on the screen blurring in front of my eyes. Matt, my husband, the man I trusted, the man I built my life with, was seeing someone else. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. They had history. There were other messages, other memories shared, all carefully hidden from me. I scrolled through their conversation, and the further I went, the more it hurt. The flirting, the inside jokes, the plans they had made together. She wasn't just some fling. This woman, Lily, had become a part of his life, a part of his world that I knew nothing about. My hands shook as I read through the months of messages, the stolen weekends, the meetings that had nothing to do with business. And the worst part? He never even tried to hide it. He thought I would never look. He thought I trusted him too much to ever doubt him. In that moment, my trust shattered. I didn't cry. Not then. I was too shocked, too numb. But the betrayal felt like a knife in my chest, twisting deeper with each passing moment. I thought about our children, about the life we had built together, about the promises he had made to me over the years. It all felt like a lie, like the ground beneath me was crumbling and I was standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering, ready to fall. But I didn't fall. Instead, something inside me hardened. The tears that had been building never came. What replaced them was a cold, sharp sense of determination. I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. That would be too easy. Too quick. He needed to feel the same pain I felt. He needed to understand what it meant to have the world you thought was safe and stable ripped out from under you. That night, I put his phone back on the charger, wiped my tears, and made a promise to myself. I was going to play the part of the unsuspecting wife. I was going to smile, laugh, and pretend that everything was okay, just like he had been doing for months. But while he was lying to me, I was planning something far worse. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to act like nothing was wrong, like I didn't know that my husband was slipping away from me every time he left the house. But behind the scenes, I was gathering evidence, pulling together every little piece of his betrayal. I wanted to make sure that when the time came, he couldn't talk his way out of it. He wouldn't be able to twist the truth, wouldn't be able to convince me that it was all just a misunderstanding. Matt had no idea what was coming. He still kissed me goodbye before leaving for his meetings, still called me in the evenings, pretending like everything was normal. But I knew better, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I had the power now. I knew the truth, and I was going to use it. The hardest part was pretending. Sitting across from him at dinner, listening to him talk about work, about the kids, about our future, while knowing that he was lying through his teeth. Every smile he gave me felt like a punch in the gut, every touch a reminder of his betrayal. But I stayed calm. I stayed patient. Because this wasn't just about confronting him. This was about making sure he felt the same pain, the same helplessness that I had felt. I was going to take control of this situation, and when I finally revealed what I knew, it would be on my terms. Matt thought he was in control, but he was wrong. This was just the beginning. Stay tuned to hear how I set the perfect trap, how I used his lies against him, and how, in the end, I took back my life, on my terms. Chapter 2. Uncovering the Affair. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Laura sat at her desk, her hands trembling slightly over her laptop. The screen glowed back at her, filled with tabs of articles on infidelity, signs of cheating, and ways to confront a spouse. It was a rabbit hole she had fallen into since the day she discovered Matt's late-night texts. The gnawing feeling in her gut had morphed into a full-blown obsession, pushing her to seek the truth. After days of restless nights and anxious thoughts, she finally made the call. Hiring a private investigator felt like a betrayal in itself, but her need for answers was stronger than her guilt. Rick, the investigator she found online, was gruff yet understanding when they spoke. He assured her that he would do everything in his power to gather the information she needed. "I'll begin by following him during his usual routines," Rick had said, his voice steady. "You'll have your answers before you know it." As she hung up the phone, a mix of relief and anxiety washed over her. Did she really want to know what Matt was doing? The thought of watching her husband's deceit unfold through someone else's eyes made her stomach churn. She spent the next few days anxiously awaiting updates, each passing hour stretching into a tormenting eternity. What if he wasn't cheating? What if she was just being paranoid? The first few days of the investigation were uneventful. Laura received texts from Rick informing her that he had tracked Matt's movements to and from work, noting his routine stops at the gym and the grocery store. "Nothing suspicious yet," Rick reported. Laura's heart sank with each message, a bitter mix of relief and disappointment. But then, on the fourth day, everything changed. Rick sent her a series of photos that caused her heart to plummet. In the images, Matt stood outside a trendy cafe, his arm wrapped around a woman with chestnut hair. Laura recognized her instantly, Lily, a coworker from Matt's office. The way he held her, the shared laughter. It was as if he had never taken a vow to her. With every click of the camera shutter, the world around Laura faded, leaving only the cold reality of her husband's betrayal. The following day, more photos came through. They were captured in a secluded park, deep in conversation. A casual touch of Matt's hand on Lily's arm, a simple act that spoke volumes about their connection. Laura felt trapped in an emotional labyrinth, every turn filled with disbelief and despair. But as she scrolled through the images, an overwhelming sense of anger began to bubble beneath the surface. It was a betrayal not only of love but of trust. The rage began to overshadow her guilt about spying. After all, wasn't she entitled to know the truth about her own life? As the days wore on, the evidence continued to pile up, confirming her worst fears. But it was the last message from Rick that truly shattered her world. "Laura, I have reason to believe Matt has been financially supporting Lily. I'll send you the details as soon as I have them." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Matt wasn't just having an affair. He was using their family's money to pay for Lily's apartment. He was stealing from their shared life, from their children's future. The realization ignited a fiery desire for revenge within her, a dark, insatiable urge that took root in her heart. Laura paced the floor of their home, the familiar warmth of their family photos now a stark contrast to her brewing storm. Memories of their life together flashed before her. Their wedding day, family vacations, the laughter of their children ringing in her ears. Each recollection turned bitter as the love she once felt for Matt was consumed by betrayal. The man she had built a life with was now a stranger, and every shared moment felt tainted. Instead of confronting him, Laura began crafting a sinister plan. She was no longer going to be the wronged wife waiting in the shadows. She would become the architect of her own revenge, and it would be exquisite. She would make him pay for the lies, the deceit, and the betrayal that had shattered her heart. Chapter 3. The Calm Before the Storm. Life continued as if nothing had changed. Laura wore a mask of normalcy, her smile a carefully crafted facade. Matt remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. They attended family events, their children's school meetings, and dinner parties with friends, all while Laura harbored a boiling rage within her. "Let's take the kids to the park this weekend," Matt suggested one evening, his tone light and casual. Laura nodded, suppressing the urge to scream. How could he be so oblivious? As she moved through their home, her eyes lingered on every detail. The family photos lining the walls, their shared possessions that once represented love but now only served as reminders of his betrayal. She felt like an actress trapped in a play, delivering lines that no longer held meaning. The air in the house grew thick with nostalgia and resentment as she walked through each room. In the kitchen, she prepared dinner, the familiar sense of garlic and thyme filling the air. The rhythmic chopping of vegetables became a form of meditation, a way to compartmentalize her emotions. Each slice of the knife felt like a release, a way to channel her frustration into something tangible. She recalled their early years together, the evenings spent cooking side by side, laughter echoing through the home. But now, the laughter was replaced with silence, and the joy had turned into a chore. After dinner, while Matt played with the kids in the living room, Laura retreated to her sanctuary, a small study where she kept her journal. The pages were filled with her thoughts, fears, and hopes. But lately, they had become a confessional for her inner turmoil. "Do you think I'm losing my mind?" she wrote one evening. "I keep wondering if I'm the crazy one, imagining things that aren't there. But then I see him with her, and it all becomes real again. How could he do this to us?" As she wrote, the tears flowed freely. The conflict inside her raged on. Guilt for what she was planning, love for the man she once adored, and the deep-seated anger that was beginning to consume her. She felt like a puppet in a play, with invisible strings tugging her in different directions. Part of her longed to confront him, to shout her truth from the rooftops. But another part of her craved a more calculated, devastating revenge. The following weeks blurred together, each day a repetition of the last. Laura became adept at hiding her emotions, wearing her mask of the dutiful wife so well that even Matt couldn't see the storm brewing beneath her calm exterior. They attended their children's soccer games, school plays, and family outings. Yet, as she cheered for their kids, Her heart felt like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at the slightest trigger. One evening, as they sat on the couch, Matt's arm draped casually over her shoulders, Laura felt a surge of disgust. His touch, once a source of comfort, now sent shivers down her spine. "We should plan a getaway for our anniversary," he suggested, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. Her heart raced. "Actually, I've been thinking about that too," she replied, suppressing the smirk threatening to creep onto her face. This was it, the perfect opportunity to set her plan in motion. Chapter 4. The Setup. Laura's voice was steady as she suggested a romantic retreat to the mountains for their upcoming anniversary. She skillfully played on his guilt, making him feel like this was their chance to reconnect. "We need this, Matt," she said, her eyes meeting his with feigned sincerity. "Just the two of us, away from everything." Matt hesitated, his brow furrowing. "Are you sure? I thought we could just stay home and have a quiet weekend." "No, we need to get away," she insisted, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Let's relive some of our best memories. I want to make this special." He finally relented, agreeing to the trip under the guise of rekindling their romance. As Laura finalized the arrangements, she felt a rush of adrenaline. Little did he know, this trip would be anything but romantic. But unbeknownst to Laura, Matt had been harboring his own secrets. He was considering leaving her for Lily, waiting for the right moment to make his move. It wasn't just the affair that troubled Laura. It was the realization that Matt was embezzling money from his company, a fact Lily was well aware of. Their plan was to take the money and run, leaving Laura and their children behind. As the date of their trip approached, Laura prepared for the confrontation she had been waiting for. She imagined every scenario, every possible outcome. Would he break down in guilt? Would he deny everything, even when faced with evidence? But deep down, she knew this was just the beginning. The rage within her simmered just beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to explode. She was no longer the victim. She was the orchestrator of her own revenge, and she was ready to unleash the storm. The quiet before the storm held its own tension, a palpable energy that danced in the air. As the days passed, Laura couldn't help but feel a thrill at the thought of what was to come. She had been wronged, and it was time for Matt to pay the price. In her heart, she knew that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming her power, her life. The darkness that had settled over her would soon be illuminated by the fire of her vengeance. As she looked around their home, she felt a mix of nostalgia and rage, two powerful forces that would soon collide in an unforgettable way. Her plan was set, and the calm before the storm was about to give way to chaos. The stage was being set for an emotional showdown, and she was ready to take control of her own fate. Wow, I really feel for Laura in these chapters. It's heartbreaking to see her struggle with self-doubt and guilt while trying to uncover Matt's betrayal. The fact that she had to hire a private investigator just to find out the truth is a testament to how far she's willing to go for answers. And when those photos come in, oof, I can't even imagine the wave of emotions she must be riding. Anger, sadness, betrayal, all while keeping up appearances as the perfect wife. The tension of her internal conflict is palpable. I can totally sympathize with her feeling trapped between love and the need for revenge. It's like she's in this emotional prison while Matt lives in his fantasy world, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath her calm facade. I can't believe he's also been financially supporting Lily. That's such a low blow. It just makes her desire for revenge even more justified. I think it's brilliant that Laura is planning a romantic getaway. It's like she's setting the stage for a masterclass in revenge. Matt thinks he's gotten away with everything, but I can't wait to see how Laura takes control of her life back. Team Laura all the way. Chapter 5. The Weekend Getaway. The trip to the mountains had an air of serenity on the surface, but Laura felt the tension simmering beneath the layers of pleasantries. As they drove along the winding roads toward the secluded cabin, the autumn colors of the forest surrounded them. The leaves, vibrant in shades of gold and crimson, created a sense of beauty that contrasted sharply with the darkness Laura carried inside. Matt sat in the driver's seat, unaware of the storm that was building both inside the cabin and within his wife. When they arrived, the cabin appeared picturesque, almost too perfect. The air was crisp, and the scent of pine hung in the cool breeze. The surrounding mountains loomed, jagged and imposing, while a distant rumble of thunder hinted at the storm approaching. Laura took in the scene with a sense of grim satisfaction. Nature itself was reflecting the turbulent emotions brewing inside her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Matt said, oblivious as he carried their bags inside. Laura nodded, forcing a smile. "It really is." As the evening set in, they settled into a rhythm of artificial normalcy. Laura suggested they reminisce about the good old days, and Matt, ever the actor, played along. They hiked through the nearby trails, the rustle of leaves underfoot masking Laura's racing thoughts. As they moved through the forest, she couldn't help but steal glances at him, wondering how she had missed the signs. His lies had been carefully crafted, and now, every casual remark he made felt like another insult to the years she had wasted believing in him. "Thought of that before you betrayed me," she said. "This is what you deserve." Just as the tension reached its peak, the storm outside knocked out the power. The room was plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the faint glow of the fire. The shadows danced across Matt's face, highlighting the growing desperation in his eyes. Chapter 8. Matt's desperation. Realizing the gravity of his situation, Matt's fear turned to madness. He lunged for the divorce papers, tearing them up in a frantic burst of energy. His hands fumbled as he grabbed the photos next, shoving them into the fire in a desperate attempt to erase the evidence. But Laura remained unfazed. She watched him with cold indifference as the photos curled and blackened in the flames. "Destroying those won't help you," she said calmly. "I've already sent copies to my lawyer. Every piece of evidence is documented." Matt froze, his plan unraveling before his eyes. His face was a mask of defeat as he sank into the couch, burying his face in his hands. "You don't have a way out, Matt," Laura said. "There's nothing left for you to destroy." Chapter 9. The Escape Plan. The storm outside raged on, but inside, a chilling silence had fallen. Laura's cold resolve had left Matt with nothing. No more lies, no more schemes. He was trapped in the web of his own making. But Laura wasn't finished. With Matt broken and desperate, she softened her tone, pretending to offer him a lifeline. "Maybe we can start over," she said quietly, her voice filled with false sincerity. "Maybe there's a way to fix this." Matt latched onto her words like a drowning man clutching a lifebuoy. "Yes," he breathed. "Yes, we can. We can fix this, I promise." But Laura had no intention of fixing anything. As Matt drifted into a restless sleep, she quietly packed her bags. She left the cabin in the dead of night, the rain still pouring down as she slipped away into the darkness. She took the car and drove off, leaving Matt stranded and alone. As Laura drove down the dark mountain roads, headlights suddenly appeared in her rearview mirror. She glanced back, her heart pounding as the car behind her gained speed. When it finally pulled up alongside her, Laura saw a familiar face behind the wheel. It was Lily. The woman who had helped Matt betray her now wanted answers of her own. Lily pulled up alongside Laura, motioning for her to stop. Laura's pulse quickened. This confrontation was going to be more explosive than she had imagined. Laura's patience and strategy are incredible throughout these chapters. In Chapter 5, she acts normal while knowing Matt's betrayal, and the storm outside mirrors the tension between them. Chapter 6 brings her calm but devastating reveal of both the affair and embezzlement, leaving Matt in shock. By Chapter 7, she demands everything in the divorce, and the power shift is complete. Matt's desperation in Chapter 8 is almost pathetic, but Laura is always ahead, with backup plans in place. Finally, in Chapter 9, she leaves him stranded, and the twist with Lily seeking revenge too makes the ending even more satisfying. Laura's control and strength are empowering. Chapter 10. The Confrontation. The drive back to the cabin was a tense one, thick with unspoken words. Laura gripped the steering wheel, her mind racing as she glanced at Lily, seated quietly beside her. The two women had formed an unexpected alliance, united by betrayal. Lily, Matt's mistress, was now just as scorned as Laura, having realized Matt's deceit went far deeper than she ever imagined. This wasn't just a man cheating on his wife. It was a man lying to everyone in his life, manipulating them for his own gain. As they approached the cabin, the tension only grew. Matt had been left there the night before, completely unaware of what was coming. He had no idea that not only had Laura turned against him, but Lily had too. The cabin looked just as foreboding as it had when Laura had first left. The storm had passed, leaving the landscape eerily quiet. That night, the fire crackled softly in the fireplace, but Laura's thoughts were anything but calm. They sat across from one another, sharing a bottle of wine. The warmth of the fire did little to soften the chill she felt toward Matt. He told a story about a family trip they'd taken years ago, laughing about a memory she used to cherish. But now, it felt hollow. Laura's eyes lingered on him as he spoke, dissecting every word, every laugh. She saw through him now, his false charm, the ease with which he lied. She had studied him for months, knowing that this weekend would be the end of it all. Outside, the wind howled, its eerie whistle punctuating the silence between them. The storm was drawing closer, just like her revenge. Chapter 6. The Revelation. On the second night, the storm had fully settled in. The wind battered the cabin, rattling the windows as the rain lashed against the roof. Inside, the fire continued to burn, casting flickering shadows across the room. Laura stood by the window, watching the chaotic weather outside. Her heart raced with anticipation. Tonight was the night. Matt sat on the couch, flipping through channels on the TV, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. Laura turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Matt," she said, her voice calm but cold. He looked up, sensing something in her tone that made him pause. "I need to talk to you," she continued, her hand gripping a manila envelope. Matt furrowed his brow, but tried to play it off with a smile. "Sure, what's up?" Laura handed him the envelope. "Open it." He hesitated for a moment, his fingers trembling slightly as he tore open the seal. Inside, he found photos. His face drained of color as he flipped through the images, photos of him and Lily. Candid moments captured outside her apartment, at a restaurant, even a kiss in the park. Each image was more damning than the last. "Laura, I can explain," he stammered, his voice shaky. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," Laura said, her voice icy, cutting through his excuses like a blade. "You've been cheating on me for months. And it's not just the affair, Matt." She stepped closer, her eyes boring into his. "I know about the money, too." Matt's hands shook as he set the photos down. He was speechless, his mind racing as he tried to process what she had just said. The rain outside pounded harder, the storm growing in intensity, mirroring the chaos inside the cabin. "What do you mean?" he asked, though deep down, he knew exactly what she meant. "The money," Laura repeated, her voice now laced with venom. "You've been embezzling from your company, and you've been using our money for our family, to pay for Lily's apartment. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Matt's face contorted in panic. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time, the reality of the situation hit him like a punch to the gut. He wasn't just losing control of his affair. He was losing everything. Chapter 7. The Ultimatum. As the storm raged outside, Laura calmly reached into her bag and pulled out a second envelope. This one, however, contained divorce papers. She dropped them on the coffee table in front of Matt, the weight of her intentions finally sinking in. "I want full custody of the kids," she said, her voice steady. "The house and a significant portion of our assets." Matt blinked, still struggling to find his voice. "Laura, please." "You don't get to negotiate," she cut him off. "You've already taken too much." Desperation flashed across Matt's face. He reached for the papers, as if by touching them he could somehow undo everything that had just happened. "We can talk about this," he pleaded. "We don't have to rush into anything. I'll end things with Lily. I'll do whatever you want." Laura's expression remained cold, unmoved by his sudden change of heart. She could see the panic in his eyes, the fear of losing everything. But there was no going back now. "You should have." Wind no longer howled, but the silence felt even more dangerous. Inside the cabin, Matt was pacing, frantic. He hadn't slept, and it showed. His eyes were wild, and his hands shook as he moved from one end of the room to the other. He couldn't understand why Laura had left him stranded or why Lily had gone silent. Something was happening, and he couldn't control it, and Matt hated not being in control. The sound of tires crunching on gravel snapped his head toward the window. He rushed to the door just as Laura and Lily stepped out of the car. Seeing the two of them together sent a wave of panic through him. He knew, in that moment, that something terrible was about to happen. When Laura and Lily entered the cabin, the atmosphere shifted. Matt attempted to put on a brave face, forcing a smile that neither woman bought. Laura's gaze was cold and steady, while Lily's was sharper, more calculating. "You thought you could play us both, didn't you?" Laura said, her voice low and controlled. Matt opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. His mind raced, searching for the right words, for any explanation that might calm the situation. But he could tell from their expressions that there was no talking his way out of this. "We know everything, Matt," Lily added, crossing her arms. "The affair, the lies, the embezzlement." Matt's heart sank. How did they know about that? He had been so careful. His stomach twisted in knots as he realized that his entire life, both personal and professional, was about to come crashing down around him. "You were going to leave me with nothing," Laura continued, her voice rising slightly. "And now, it's you who's going to be left with nothing." Before Matt could respond, there was a sudden knock at the door. The sound startled all three of them. Matt, his nerves already frayed, jumped slightly. Laura exchanged a glance with Lily before stepping back as Matt went to open the door. Standing on the doorstep was a man in a suit, holding a briefcase and a solemn expression. "Matthew Turner?" he asked, his voice firm. Matt's throat went dry. "Why, yes, that's me," he stammered. The man stepped forward, handing him an official-looking envelope. "I'm a representative from your company. We've been investigating discrepancies in the financial reports, and as of this morning, we've confirmed evidence of embezzlement." The words hit Matt like a freight train. His vision blurred as he looked from the envelope to the man's stern face. What are you talking about?" he tried to argue, but it was no use. He knew exactly what they had found. "Your accounts have been frozen, and you're facing legal action," the man continued, his tone cold and professional. "We'll be in touch with your lawyer to discuss the next steps." The representative turned and walked away, leaving Matt standing there, holding the envelope like it was a ticking bomb. He slammed the door shut, his breathing erratic, his hands trembling. His mind was spinning out of control. Laura and Lily stood watching him, their expressions unwavering. Matt looked at them, a flicker of realization crossing his face. "You," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "You did this." Lily smiled. "I tipped them off," she said simply, "after you told me your whole plan. Did you really think I'd let you ruin my life too?" Matt's knees felt weak, and he slumped into a chair. Everything was falling apart. His job, his reputation, his marriage, his entire life. He had nothing left. Chapter 11. The Fallout. Over the next few days, Matt's world completely unraveled. The company wasted no time in pressing charges for embezzlement, and with his accounts frozen, he was left without access to any of his money. He was under investigation, his assets seized, and legal action was imminent. Laura, meanwhile, had already filed for divorce and had the upper hand. She took the kids and moved into the house, leaving Matt to deal with the consequences of his actions. There would be no reconciliation, no second chance. The man who had tried to manipulate and deceive everyone around him was now alone, his carefully constructed world crumbling. As Laura packed up her belongings from the cabin for the final time, she felt a strange sense of peace. The storm had passed, both literally and figuratively. The skies were clear, and the cabin, once filled with tension and deceit, now felt empty. She loaded the last of her bags into the car and glanced back at the cabin. It was a part of her past now, a chapter she was ready to close. Driving away, she felt lighter than she had in years. For the first time, she wasn't carrying the weight of betrayal or resentment. She had reclaimed her life, and the road ahead felt open and full of possibility. Chapter 12. The New Beginning. Laura's new life was everything she had hoped for. She moved back into the house with the kids, focusing on rebuilding their lives. She didn't rush into finding new love or trying to fill the void that Matt had left behind. Instead, she focused on rediscovering her own strength, her own independence. The divorce was final, and Laura felt a sense of closure she hadn't thought possible. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She had taken control of her own story, and the revenge she had sought wasn't just about Matt's downfall. It was about her own liberation. As the weeks went by, Laura found joy in the simple things. She spent more time with the kids, took up new hobbies, and reconnected with old friends. Life wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and that was enough. One afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. Laura's heart skipped a beat when she saw the return address. It was from Lily. She opened it cautiously, unsure of what to expect. Inside was a single note, handwritten in Lily's sharp, elegant script. "I guess we both got what we wanted, didn't we?" it read. Laura frowned, confused at first, but as she read further, the truth became clear. Lily had fled the country, taking with her some of the embezzled money that Matt had siphoned off. She had played her own game of revenge, ensuring that Matt would be left with nothing, while she disappeared with a small fortune. Laura couldn't help but laugh at the audacity of it. Lily had been playing her own long game all along. In the end, both women had outsmarted Matt, each getting what they needed from him. Laura's revenge had been about reclaiming her life, and Lily's had been about escaping her own broken world. In a strange way, Laura felt no anger toward Lily. They had both been victims of Matt's manipulation, but now they were free. The note was a final goodbye, a reminder that they had both survived and won, in their own ways. Laura folded the note and placed it in a drawer, smiling to herself. The chapter with Matt was over, and her new beginning had truly begun. No more lies, no more deceit, just freedom. Laura's journey in these final chapters is a powerful, satisfying conclusion. Teaming up with Lily, both women turned the tables on Matt, exposing his betrayal and his embezzlement, leading to his personal and professional downfall. Laura's calculated revenge, slow and deliberate, leaves Matt with nothing, while she gains peace and independence. In the end, the twist of Lily's letter shows both women got their freedom, making this a poetic and triumphant end to the story of betrayal and survival.